We begin this week with the first ever meeting between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump at the ABC News presidential debate. The fiery meeting between the two started with a handshake before at times getting testy. Did Vice President Harris get under former President Trump's skin? Most polling will tell you Harris came out the winner, but the long-term impact the debate will have on the overall race is still yet to be seen. On Thursday, former President Trump said there will not be another matchup between the two. So, Senator Tichenor, I want to let you start the conversation here. Do you believe that this was a fair debate?
Oh, absolutely not. It's never fair when Trump is going to be the one on the ticket to be debated against. And it's been clear the media has been against him for years, ever since he came down the escalator. It was a 3-on-1 debate, essentially. It played out as you watched the moderators actually question him and push back on him and debate him, and they failed to do so in an equal manner against Kamala Harris. So, yeah, it definitely wasn't set out to be fair.
How do you see it, Representative Herron?
I obviously think opposite. I think it was a very fair debate, and I think that the moderators did their job by fact-checking in real time. I think that the American people deserve that. It was 70 million people who were watching that debate. And that's 1/3 increase of the debate between him and Biden back in June. And so I think the moderators did what they were supposed to do by fact-checking him. But I think that what needs to be clear is the performance that former President Trump did. It's the same type of rhetoric that has gotten us in the place that we are today in America.
What are some moments that stuck out to both of you?
I think one of the moments that I really appreciated from our Vice President Kamala Harris was whenever she laid out her policy platform. I think that the American people want to know, like, what is it that you're going to do for us? And laying that out, we know that small businesses is the bedrock of our communities, whether you're in a rural community or urban community, that we have to make sure that people have money to build small businesses. And one of the things that we did not hear from the former president is he didn't lay out anything. The only thing that he did lay out was continue to spew hate. And then when you look at his body language, the looks on his face, a total disgruntled leader, and that's not what we need here in America.
Senator Tichenor?
Well, I obviously disagree with you. You know, Kamala laid out some policies that she obviously just came up with. She's been silent on policies up until a few days before the debate, and it looks like they were just a copy and paste moved over from what Biden had proposed and maybe a few extra ideas of her own that she's come up with. But she's done no interviews up to this point. This is us finally getting to hear from her, and she had backup from 2 moderators who did not push back on her in any way, shape, or form. Same moderators who actually heard her in a debate in 2020, of which she dropped out because she did not receive one single delegate and 1 vote in order to move forward in that race. Same similar situation. She has not received 1 single vote from a citizen, and here she is, our nominee for the Democratic ticket. But they moderated and interviewed her in the debate in 2020 primary, and she's clearly come up with some very contradictory positions, and yet they don't push back on her in that manner. She's changing her tune because the message is not getting received from the American people, and it's not a message that's going to win over the voters.
I mean, I think that one thing that we have to know as leaders, we hope that we do evolve. We hope that we learn more things, we get new information, and that it does help shift and change where our stances are on policies. And so for anyone who says that she's flip-flop policies, we should learn and we should grow. But I think at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that we have 2 stark different candidates, different platforms. You've got one platform that's saying we want to bring our American people together, and you have one platform that is displaying false information. Let's be very clear. Former President Trump took his time as a leader very consciously and said that there's migrants that are eating people's cats and dogs.
This is a true statement. This is true.
He said that, but what they're saying is he didn't fact check. He didn't call the people of Springfield. You've got the leaders of Springfield saying he did not call us. He could have called us and ask this information, and to say that there's this large group of people that are doing this heinous thing, it's not true. And that is not the type of leader.
It is absolutely true, and it's happening. There's video footage of it happening. There's testimony at meetings, public meetings, of people saying that it's happening. And listen, I will tell you, I lived in the Dominican Republic for 4 years. We had Haitians all around us. This is something they do. To say that it's not happening and it's not culturally something they do is just ignorant of what Haitians do. That's not to say anything against Haitians. There are some great Haitians that I've met, that I'm friends with in the time that we lived there, but we're hearing from personal testimony of this actually happening. And the fact that they would not that everybody is pushed back to say this is false when you have the people on the ground living there saying it's happening, just again disregards the American people in their voice in order to uphold a message that you all think that Trump is lying and being dishonest when he wasn't.
That type of rhetoric is a racist.
Truthful rhetoric
is racist tropes, and it's very dangerous.
It's truthful, accurate information.
And the fact that you've heard Springfield leaders saying that this is not true,
no.
I think that we need to be speaking to the leaders of the community.
Is there a way to have a conversation around immigration, especially now that this topic has been put into the public sphere nationally, without going down rabbit holes that people can portray as conspiratorial?
I mean, I definitely think that we have to have conversations about immigration. I think that if you ask anybody, no matter what side of the aisle that you're on, that they're going to say yes, that we have to do something with our immigration system. Now, exactly what are the policy solutions that is going to be the answer? I personally don't know what those answers are, but I do think that we need to really look. Our immigration system is broken. The federal laws that we have are broken, but I do know that in Congress they have tried to pass some things, and from my understanding, former President Trump made calls to the Republicans in Congress and said, don't vote for this, when they were actually going to vote for it.
A quick last word before we have to move
last
on.
word. The answer is close the border. We have had over 20 million migrants come into the United States illegally across our border with no accountability. Now we hear reports that 300,000 children, are missing. We don't know where they've gone. They've been trafficked over the border. We have to close our border. The discussion needs to be around closing our border, building up the wall, and finishing that job. Now, finally, Kamala Harris is saying we need to do that. She's changed her position on that recently because it's such an important issue, and we have got to close our border.
All right, we got to tap the brakes on this subject right here, but still much more to discuss.